Name of today's class?
Pardon me?
What's the name of today's class? What's the
Today's
theme?
lecture.
Yeah, today's lecture.
Oh, good question.
Not the letter, but the theme.
User interface, or GUI programming, GUI programming. Yeah, that's what we're going to be doing today. Or more technically, GUI programming with tkinter. That's the name of the library we're going to be using. And we're going to be using buttons, we're going to be using labels, and we're going to be using entry fields. So at the top of all of our programs, we're pretty much going to have this. From tk, capital T, sorry, lowercase I, tkinter import star. That way we get pretty much everything out of the tkinter library. However, there's one thing that doesn't seem to bring in. We'll import it if we need to. And then up near the top of the program after our import, we're going to have some kind of thing that builds a graphical user window. And we need to just store that in a variable name. So some of the examples I looked up called it top, some of them called it root, I just wound up calling it win, like for the window. And I'm going to wind up typing all this into idle in a minute. But that creates the window. And then if we want to make a a label, I'm just going to call it LA for label, or lab. And then it's capital label, parentheses, and we give it the name of the window that we want to attach it to. And like I said, I'm going to wind up typing all this in again in just a minute. And then we're filling in a named parameter with the text username so that when it pops up, there'll be some text on the screen that says, username. And then we have to call pack on it. And what pack does is it actually adds it to the window specified. So lab.pack. And then underneath all that, we're going to have something called main loop. We're going to make, just like when we're drawing our turtles, down at the bottom of the code, sometimes there was a call to a loop to keep it up and running. So this would be win.mainLoop. Now this is the first stuff I'm going to type into idle right here. All it's going to do is display a little dinky little window with the words username on it. Absolutely nothing else. That's enough to get us started. Why'd you do that? And speaking of which lecture are we on? Did you say Q? Well,
It's W.
W? All right, cool deal. All righty. Save as lecture W. Put it in my scripting directory. UVW. Yep, what do you know? All right, so GUI examples using tkinter. That's what I'm doing today. One thing I'm thinking about doing is kind of breaking all this code off with if statements so that when we're tired of running one thing, we can just write another one. So here's what I'm going to do. I'm going to say choice is equal to 1, and then I'm going to do if choice equals 1. You don't need a parentheses, sorry. Then do the stuff we're about to do. But let's go ahead and do our import up at the top. Or we could just import it every single time we needed it, but somewhere up here we need to do from T, capital T, K-I-N-T-E-R, import star. And then when is equal to capital T, lowercase k, parentheses in parentheses. And then down here, a couple lines underneath that, let's do when.mainLoop, all lowercase letters. Let's just see what that does. Probably nothing. We haven't added any text to it. We haven't added labels or buttons to it. Alrighty, no module name tkinter. Let me check my other examples. Okay, lowercase t. Sorry about that. My example had an uppercase t. Excuse me. Lowercase t, tkinter. I thought that looked a little bit weird. Change my example. There we go. So when I run it, it makes a window. Woo. That's all it does. But that's okay. We're getting started. Let's add a label to our button. How about just L1 for label 1? It's not LL, it's L1, but it wouldn't matter as long as you typed it the same way every single time. Is equal to label with a capital L, parentheses, and we want that label to be attached to this window. And what do we want it to say? Username. End quote, parentheses. And now we're going to pack it, which puts it into the window. So L1.pack. Now let's make a text entry box. So I'm going to call it E1 for entry. You know, calling it username or something like that would be better, but I'm trying to make the things easiest to type as possible. E1 is equal to entry. Attach it to our window. So entry parentheses win, in parentheses. There's nothing magic about the word win. That's just what I named my window. A lot of examples I saw called it root or master. Win seems easy to type to me, so I went with win. And then we need to pack that as well. E1.pack. Now we're going to run it. And it blows up. What line does it blow up on? Line 12. Oh, excuse me. Where it says username, we have to specify what we're actually doing there. What we're doing is we're setting the text of the label equal to username. So make sure you tack that on there. Because there's a whole bunch of things you can do with the label. You can change its foreground color, its background color, its font. But this is what the text is supposed to say. All right, there we go. It says username, and it's got this little field to type underneath it. This is pretty small. When you pack stuff, it shrinks the window down to the absolute smallest size to contain everything that you've added to it. There are other ways of placing things on the screen besides the .pack command. However, .pack is the easiest, the quickest for us to type in, so that's what we're going with for now. But when we pack, we can specify whether what we want goes to the top, the left, the right, or the bottom, or just wherever it happens to be sitting. I think it'd be kind of neat if it said username on one side and then it had the entry field on the other side. And we can do that. We can say, here we're packing our label, the one that says username. We can do side equals all caps left, like that. I just changed that. And inside this pack, I'm going to do side equals all caps right. And there we go. There we get our little dialog. I like the way that looks a little bit better. Username, and it's got some stuff here. But then we probably want a login button or something like that down at the bottom. Now we're not going to make any of this stuff actually do anything. This is just our first example. I wanted to have some text, a data entry field, and a login button. So how about B1 for login button? Is equal to button, parentheses, and we know where it's going to go. Right there. We need some text for it. Text is equal to login. And then we need the name of a function for it to call. Well, we don't have a function for it to call. So I guess we better go and put the name of a function for it to call. So up here, I'm going to define a function for it to call. def login, parentheses in parentheses, and all it's going to do is print hello, or logging in, right? Not going to do anything cool. We just need some function name so that when we actually create the button, here, we can fill in that function name here. And then I have to pack that as well, but I want to put it underneath this other stuff. So I'm going to do b1.pack, parentheses, side equals bottom. Or not. Positional argument follows keyword argument. I goofed that up. Let me look what it's supposed to be. Oh, command. I need to specify. Once you start putting named parameters. I don't even recall if we've talked about named parameters. We may need to talk about that for a few minutes. Command equals login. So when you're specifying a button, what you got to do is you say what window the button is on and what function it's supposed to call. Now we don't actually put parentheses here, even though functions need parentheses, right? So absolutely do not type what I'm about to type because I'm going to delete it. That's kind of what we would like for it to look like, right? Because it's supposed to call login when the button is clicked. That's what the command says. Well, if we put the parentheses there, it would try to run it right away, right? It would see that and it'd go, okay, I need to call login right dang now, not wait until they click it. So instead, we just specify the name of the function, but we don't actually do anything with it. All right, now there's no button. I wonder why. Oh, what are you wrong? Yeah, main loop should go underneath all this stuff. So I'm going to cut main loop and push it down here to the bottom. Well, when I put it down there on the bottom, the login button wound up being squished between the username and the input field. That looks kind of lame. Maybe I'll put it all the way to the right. So I may have to change the order of these things. What happens if I change that to side equals right? I guess if I rearrange the order in which these were made, right? If I made the button, or maybe I could push the input field to the left. Let's see what that does. Or not. I lost my parentheses. There we go. All right, I like that. Username. We've got an input field and we've got login. And every time I click the login button, it calls that function, which we can prove by pulling this up. It says logging in, logging in. So this is what's known as an event. When it calls main loop, the program is just sitting there, not doing anything, right? It does all this stuff. It makes the windows, it creates the button and the label and the entry field, and then it just sits there, not doing a dang thing until I click the button. And when I click the button, part of the program that we don't see, part of the library, sits there waiting for that button to be clicked, and when it is clicked, it calls login, the login function. All right. right, so that's about as far as we're going to take that one, but we're going to keep going in a minute. But I want to make sure that everybody wants to have. All right, while debugging, we ran into a situation where it kept saying this is a syntax error, absolutely no matter what. And when we commented it out, the rest of it worked. And then when we uncomment, all we did to fix it is we deleted those 2 lines and retyped them in. I know that sounds stupid, but we fixed it. Usually when you see something and it shows this highlighted and it says syntax error right there, usually the problem is on the line above it. This time that didn't seem to be the case. All right, so that's our first example. Now we're going to write this in the form of a class that does the same thing. So let's no longer make it choice equals 1. We're going to go on and do a choice equals 2. Whoops, sorry. Leave that one choice equals 1. Right? The if statement needs to be choice equals 1. But we're changing that to choice equals 2 so that we can write another set of code and only have it run one of them. So as soon as you change choice is equal to 2, let's run way down here and do if choice equals 2. So what we're going to do is we're going to write this in the form of a class. And the class is going to need to know the same things. It's going to need to have a label in it, and it's going to need to have an entry, and it's going to need to have a button and a function for it to call. So let's define our class. And I'm just going to call it GUI1. And every class needs an init method, and the init method is going to be what builds all this stuff. But when we call the init method, we're going to need to pass in our window handle. So what we're going to do first is the first line of our if choice is equal to 2 stuff is going to look like this. When is equal to tk, capital T. And then we're going to do GUI is equal to GUI, all caps, passing in the window handle. And then GUI dot main loop, like that. But we're going to put all the rest of the stuff right here inside the GUI class. And it's going to make typing it a little bit more annoying because we're going to be putting self-dots in front of everything in order to get that to work. All right, let's write our init method. def underscore underscore init underscore underscore parentheses self comma win, because we're passing in our window handle. So self.win equals win. And so as to not make this one overly large, I'm going to skip doing the entry and just make a label. L1 is equal to label win comma text equals. It's not going to start off with any text. How about that? Just for fun. And then when they click a button, we're going to write something there. And then L1.pack. But I should be going back and adding self-dot in front of these things if I think that I'm going to need them accessible for more than one function. I'm not sure that's the case, so I'm not going to add self-dot yet to these things. Because, I mean, it wouldn't hurt, right? But if we don't need to pass them between functions, then we can leave that off. All right, now let's make our button. B1 is equal to button attached to our window. The text is equal to greetings, end quote. And the command equals greet. Excuse me. The command is equal to self.greet because we're going to make a function that's part of this class. Then we got to pack that as well. So the next line of text is going to be b1.pack. All right, this example is not going to do exactly what I was planning because I haven't introduced the string var class yet. So let's just change the label to my GUI, something like that. All right, so I'm going to add my b1.pec, but I better write my function that the button is going to call. So I need to write a function called greet. But it's not really a function, it's a method because it's part of the class. I know that it's part of the class because it's preceded by the self dot. All right, so I'm going to tab over one backspace, right? DEF, because this needs to be, you know, on the same level as that one, right? And so DEF greet, parentheses, in parentheses, quote, print, why hello there. We could come up with something better than that, something that would pop up a message on the middle of the screen. But I'm in a hurry to get this running. Who knows how many syntax errors I have, so I'm going to go ahead and run it, find out. Yep, invalid syntax. Oh. When you define a class, how do you define it? And the answer is certainly not with the DEF keyword. What should I be putting there in front of it? Class. Right. Okay. So fix that line so it says class, not DEF. GUI is not defined. Is that so? Oh, that's because I called it GUI1 up here. Excuse me. Since I have GUI1 up there, maybe I'll just make that GUI rather than change it down at the bottom. Whatever. Change one or the other. Change that or that. Make them match. GUI object has no attribute main loop. That should be win.main loop. My mistake. Or GUI.win.main loop. Either one of those would work. Oh, and it blew up. Greet takes 0 arguments, but 1 was given. I wrote this function wrong. What do I need to put between the parentheses to get that to work? Self. Yeah, self, just like all the other methods. Okay, so I'm getting to the point where I've made too many mistakes. I had to fix that line. I had to fix that line. And I had to fix that line. So if you're getting an error on any one of those 3 lines, look at the changes that I made. Or just look what I changed it to. I believe it's going to work now. All right. Greetings. Why, hello there. And if I keep pressing that, it keeps calling that method. All right, I'm not real happy with my little thing of doing GUI.win.main loop here. I'm just going to make that win.main loop. The reason that worked is because the first thing that the init function did is set a variable equal to what we passed in. But we don't need to call that one when we have this one just hanging out right there already. And I don't want it to look too different from the other code, so I'm going to remove that. All right. So I hope you get the idea that what init is doing is it's setting everything up. It's adding all the controls to the dialog, and then we add a separate function for each button. What if we wanted to add a close button? I mean, it already kind of has one, right? When we run it, you know, we can click that. But I'm going to add a close button just for the joy of adding one more, you know, function to my class. So just copy all that stuff, paste it, and change B1 to B2. So copy, copy, paste, change the B1s to B2s, and then change greetings to close. And then command needs to no longer be .greet, it's going to be .close. Maybe I should have just retyped it. Just trying to save myself some trouble. So those are our two new lines. But I'm going to have to write a function called close. So maybe above greet, maybe below it, it doesn't matter. def close, parentheses self, I'm not going to make that mistake again. Print goodbye. And then we're going to actually call a function that's part of the window class of the TK class itself. So we're going to do self.win.destroy. Sounds bad, but all it means is take that window and get rid of it, and it'll close it. We won't have it around on the screen anymore. All right, that seemed to work. So let me pause, make sure everybody's caught up. And now I can't get it all to fit on one screen anymore. Maybe I can. There. Okay, what if we wanted it to actually pop up, you know, like if you get an error message on Windows, it pops up a little window right in the middle of the screen. A lot of programming libraries call that a message box. So we're going to write a message box, or we're going to use a message box. And oddly, this is a case where just doing from tkinter import star doesn't always seem to work. Sometimes we have to add this from statement separately. But let's give it a shot. Let's go down here to greet, and let's see if we can use the message box call. And if we can't, then we'll go back and we'll add an import, a from import statement. So message box.show info parentheses hello end quote quote hi there. The first one's the title. The second one is the text that you want to display in it. Now that it's doing that, I may just get rid of the print statement, right? It's doing something really cool. It's going to be displaying it on screen. I don't really need these bars of comments anymore. So every time I click greetings, ooh, it blew up and see it said message box is not defined. Even though we did the import, it wasn't there. So we're going to add one more import. Maybe up here, scroll all the way up to the top, and where it says from tkinter import star, also do from tkinter import message box. Now honestly, this should have brought message box in, but since it didn't, we're adding it. Now heck, maybe it worked for you, I don't know. All right, and so when I click it, it says hello, hi there. So as long as you got that, now I'm going to scroll back down because I've kind of hidden the other code. There are different kinds of message boxes. That's an info, but what about show warning? I wonder if that's a message box type. Right, that displays a construction sign. We're telling them, uh-oh, you better pay attention to this. Well, how about show error? Well, that's pretty emphatic, right? The red circle. But anyways, if we had an error message, we might want to pop that up. All right, so we've written our second user interface. What's the big deal about this one? Mostly that it was structured as a class. You can structure your user interfaces as classes. You don't have to. The good thing about structuring them as classes is that whenever you want to do them, then from now on, really this stuff should be inside some kind of if underscore underscore name equals underscore underscore main, right? But anyways, you could do import lecture W, and then we would have this window which we could use. I'm going to try something. Now that I have run this, I ought to be able to do this. G2 is equal to GUI, or wait, W2 is equal to TK. I'm typing this into the shell. That's not right. See, and it popped that up. And then G2 is equal to GUI parentheses W2, and it added buttons to it. And W2 dot main loop, it's going to sit there and wait until the program is done. So if we were going to use this user interface from another program, we'd just do import, import lecture W. Or we might do from lecture W import, GUI. All right, how about one where we do user input and user output? All right, we're going to change our choice from 2 to something else, right? Because we don't want to run this one anymore. Scroll back up to the top where it said choice equals 2 and change it to choice equals 3. Because we're going to write a new chunk of code.
Keep in mind, general use it that much more. No, I understand. Hey. Thank you.
So what's this one going to look like? I'm imagining something that's got a place for 2 numbers to be typed in. And then you click an add button and it shows the results. To do that, we're going to need something known as the string var, the string variable. Let's get an idea how that works first before we go all half-cocked. So here's what I'm going to do. I'm going to create a string variable, so I'm just going to call it SV. We're probably going to delete this stuff in a minute. But SV is equal to string, capital S, var, VAR, capital V. And if we want to set the text of it, we call sv.set, parentheses. Just put something as there. And then when you're ready to get that text back out, you use sv.get. Like text is equal to sv.get. And then you can print the text out. All it's going to print is my name is Joe. Or not.
All right, I'll let you know. Take care. Thank you. Sure.
Do we have to create a window before we could do that? That would be annoying. Just a second, I'm going to play. Yeah, what do you know? We had to do this part before we could create a string variable. So, all right, fine. Go ahead and do that. This was just demo code that I was going to delete anyways. But you can see what it's doing, right? It's creating some kind of structure that'll contain a string. And so we call .set to stuff our string into it. And then we call .get to get our string back out. Now, why would we bother doing that? Because that is how you tie text like from an input field. Like you actually want to let them type in the password like we did on the other one. You tie the text field. You know what, we could actually go and modify the other one. We had to do this. Anyways, for that entry, you say, I want that entry to fill in this variable. Oh, let's do that. Let's do that. Let's do that. We're going to create a user interface. It's going to let, that's going to have an entry that is tied to that string, and then a button for whatever purposes. Maybe when the button is clicked, it changes the text of it. So we have a string variable. Let's set up an entry that uses it. How about E for entry, or EN? Well, I was talking about making it have two numbers, so let's make it EN1 for entry 1 is equal to entry, and we want it to be attached to this window, and the text variable it uses is going to be that SV. Tell you what, make that SV1, right? Because in a minute we're going to need a SV2. So here we go. EN1 is equal to entry, parentheses when, comma, text variable equals SV1. And then pack that. EN1.pack. We don't really need to print anything anymore. And as a matter of fact, we don't need this text get line anymore either. So I'm going to delete that text equals get line. Boom. And I'm going to delete that line. But then I do need to call main loop. So win dot main loop. All right, and there's my little user interface. All it's got is a text input field called my name is Joe, but that's all I needed to have. If we wanted to get the text back out when we clicked a button, we would use .get to get it out. So I'm going to go ahead and define my functions inline right here. Yeah, I don't really know about that. I'll try doing them the right way. Okay, so this thing's just going to do a message box and say whatever was entered in that string. So I'm going to call it say it. And what does it do? It gets the text out of that text variable. So text equals sv1.get parentheses in parentheses. And then we're going to do that message box.show info thing. Message box.show info parentheses message end quote comma text. But we need to create a button that will call that function. So down under en1.pack, we're going to make a button, and then we're going to pack that button. Whoops. So above main loop, not to repeat that mistake, B1 for button 1 is equal to button with a capital B. What window is it attached to? It's attached to window WIN. It's text equals quote say it end quote comma, and the function that it's supposed to call command equals say it. Whoops, I spelled that wrong. Say it like that. Now when you write your own code, if I asked you in homework to write your own, would you be putting all this if choice equals 1, if choice equals 2, if choice equals 3 business? No. That's just to, so that we can get it to only run a section of our code during testing, right? You wouldn't be sticking 3 windows in one file and then doing if choice equals run 1, run Windows 1 or whatever, right? That's just for our purposes during writing this class. Typically, we would not have anything like that in here. I hope that's clear. All right, so run module, it pops it up. Oh, I forgot to do something to get it to show my button, and I said I was going to do it, but I didn't. What did I need to do after I created the button? I got to pack it. Yep, so b1.pack. And so if I click say it, it says my name is Joe. If I wanted to, I could edit that text field. I miss Stanley. Alrighty, say it. There we go. So when we activate that button, it calls our say it function, and our say it function gets that text out of that string variable. Alrighty. I think I'm going to leave that one alone, and we're going to write one more of these user interfaces. It may be the last one for today, which is going to be the one that adds two numbers together. Or maybe does something different. We'll figure out what it's going to do.
I know, I think I'm on the same time.
So I'm going to scroll back up here and change choice equal to 4, because we're writing a new section of code. Then I'm going to scroll back down and I'm going to write an if choice equals 4 block. And do we want to write it as a class? It doesn't make it that much more difficult to write as a class, so maybe so. Class space adder. And what is adder going to do? It's going to have a place, don't type this. It's going to have a place where they type in a number, and then it's going to have a output field that shows the result, and then it's going to have an add button, and every time they click add, it's going to add whatever's in that field to the result. The result can start off as 0. That's what I want it to do. So df underscore underscore init underscore underscore parentheses self comma win, because we have to let the calling code, the client code, pass in a function, period, excuse me, colon, self.win equals win. Now we kind of need to do the same thing that we've been doing previously. We need to create we're going to need a string variable for the number that they're going to add. So let's do that. Self.snum for string number equals string var, parentheses in parentheses, and let's set its text equal to 0. Our number is going to start off with 0 or 1. So self.snum.set parentheses quote 1 end quote, like that. Now we haven't actually created an input field that's linked to that yet, and so we better do that too. En for entry. So en is equal to entry, parentheses, win, comma. I'm going to have to scroll back up and see it. Oh, it's already right here. Good. And then text variable equals self.snum. And we better pack that. Instead of calling it adder, let's call it doubler. Just because what I'm going to make the button do is multiply it by 2 every time. So class doubler. Alright, so let's make a button. BT1. It's really lame to give buttons generic names like that, but I'm trying to make it easy to type right because I don't want to have to, Just know that you should pick good variable names, and I pick variable names up here to make them easier to type, but that'd be good. So BT1 is equal to button, parentheses, WIN, text equals double, end quote, comma, and the command equals self dot doubler. I would make it just self dot double, but I'm worried that since double's not a keyword in this language, so we can just call it self dot double. That sounds good to me. And we got to pack that as well. BT1 dot pack. And we better write a double function that's going to read in the value of, well, let's run it and make sure it does correct any syntax errors here first. Okay, so now that we have our class, it's not finished, but we need to create an object of that type. So when is equal to capital T, lowercase k, as always. And GUI equals doubler, parentheses, when, and then when dot main loop. Although it's not done, I want to catch syntax errors as soon as possible, like that. All right, well, sure. Doubler object has no attribute double. Not surprising it says that. We're going to have to add a method for handling the doubling. I was hoping I could chase out other syntax errors before that, but for now, all double is going to do is print something. And then I'm going to fix it with something good. So I'm adding a new method there, so it needs to be indented on line with that one. And remember that the if statement needs to be totally unindented so that it won't be part of this method. So int or def double parentheses self end parentheses colon, just print doubling. All right. I just wanted to compile, so I'm not making that actually do anything useful. All right, looks like it worked. All right, guys. Pause the recording for a moment. Sorry about that. What I want you to do next is to add that line of code to your init function right there. Get that in there. What we're doing is we're creating a variable that's going to hold a number that's being doubled. And then change this part of this snum.set, right? On your screen, before you change it, it's just quote 1. Change it to that. So these mark the 2 new lines of code. And then down here, we're actually going to change those 2 lines. Or we're actually going to double the number. So self.number times equals 1. Everybody in class has already got this. Self.snum.set, because that's our string variable name. Parentheses. str parentheses self.number in parentheses in parentheses. And we have to do that because whatever we set onto the screen has to be a string. And right now, right, self.number is a number.
It has to be times 2.
Yeah, why did I do times 1? Times equals 1. That'd be real fascinating, huh? All right, times equals 2. All right, maybe that's going to work. Yep. Wonder how large it can get before it breaks. Yeah, whatever. Okay.
Make that text field larger.
There are ways of controlling the appearance. Yeah, the question was, can we make the text field larger? Let's see if we can set a width for a control. Google that up. It's an entry field, so tkinter entry minimum width. Why do I have a doubt that that's going to work? I'm going to give it a shot. After we pack the entry, we're going to do en dot, I've already forgotten what that said. Pretty sure this is not going to work. Dot place width equals 100. So let's make that width equals 200. We're going to make it really wide. So I just added that, and I'm kind of hoping it's going to work. Well, it did something. What if I do side equals right, excuse me, all caps there, side equals right for that packing, and side equals left for that packing. So right now we're playing with these three lines of code. I can't say that it's really working. When we created the window, we could probably set a minimum width for the window, and now we have, you know, a place to. It's not doing a good thing. There are better management tools for placing things on the screen than using that .pack command. There's a grid where you can specify which position on the screen you want to put it on. So let's say, I'm going to undo those changes. Maybe I'll leave the side right and the side left, but I'm going to get rid of the width. All right, I think that's about enough of user interfaces. Basically, I wanted you to have the idea, and we're going to go back and do this again on Thursday, of the idea of the buttons, and the buttons call functions. You know, and the functions can either be part of a class as methods, or they can be just written, you know, inside your code as a regular old function. You can stick user interfaces as part of classes, in which case, you know, the init function sets everything up and adds it to the window. And then you add extra functions which handle every, you know, click, close, you know, every click on a button. Yeah, I think that's good. Let me go ahead and make the Dropbox, and we will be done. I'll do a walkabout in just a moment.